$100,000 if you can get this Lamborghini running, Marcus Wellington III declared, his voice a theatrical boom that silenced the hushed, reverent atmosphere of the Platinum Motors dealership. He adjusted the gold Rolex on his wrist, a casual, ostentatious gesture designed to underscore the chasm between his world and that of the woman standing before him. He gestured towards the sleek, low-slung supercar, a monument of Italian engineering that sat inert and lifeless on the showroom floor. Then he turned his gaze, a slow, contemptuous sweep, to the young black woman in the dirt-smudged overalls. But when you fail, he continued, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face, and you will fail. I want you to stand up, in front of everyone here, and admit that women don't know a damn thing about engines. Kesha Johnson, 28 years old, and the owner of a small, and perpetually struggling, suburban auto repair shop, stood motionless, a small, solitary island in a sea of testosterone and privilege. Around her, in the gleaming cathedral showroom in the heart of Beverly Hills, at least 15 of the city's wealthiest men, a veritable wolf pack of old money and new arrogance, watched the unfolding drama as if it were a private, and very exclusive, circus spectacle. Their laughter, a low rumbling chorus of derision, echoed off the polished marble walls as they began to place bets among themselves, not on if she would fail, but on how long it would take her to give up. The situation had escalated with a sudden, dizzying velocity. Kesha had come to the dealership for a single, mundane reason, to pick up a specialized part she had ordered for a client's vintage Porsche. But as she had waited, she had overheard the dealership's head mechanic, a man with a self-important air and a pristine, factory-certified uniform, making a series of increasingly confident, and increasingly incorrect, diagnoses on Marcus Wellington's stalled Lamborghini. And Kesha, in a moment of pure, unadulterated professional integrity, had politely, and quietly, corrected him. It had been like throwing a match into a vat of gasoline. Look at this, everyone, Marcus had shouted, his voice ringing with a theatrical, almost gleeful, indignation. He had gestured towards Kesha, his arm a sweeping, dramatic arc. The little lady here, she thinks she knows more about my car than our own factory-certified expert. He had paused, milking the moment for all it was worth. I'll bet you she doesn't even know the difference between a piston and a carburetor. What Marcus, in his towering, unshakable arrogance, could not possibly have known was that Kesha Johnson had practically been born with a wrench in her hand. She had grown up in the greasy, chaotic, and beautiful world of her grandfather's junkyard, a sprawling magical kingdom of forgotten and broken machines. She had spent her childhood taking apart engines, learning their secrets, their rhythms, their languages. She had gone on to earn an honors degree in mechanical engineering from one of the country's top programs, and she had spent 3 long and very secret years working as a technical consultant for one of the nation's largest and most prestigious automakers. But her youthful appearance, her black skin, her female gender, it was a combination that, in a world like this, a world of men like Marcus Wellington, rendered her expertise, her intelligence, her very existence, utterly invisible. So, young lady, Marcus had continued, his voice a low, condescending purr, my Lambo has been sitting here for 2 long, and very expensive weeks. For different, and highly paid mechanics have thrown up their hands in defeat. They say it's a problem with the electronic fuel injection system, something no one can seem to figure out. He had crossed his arms, a gesture of pure, unadulterated condescension. If you're as good as you seem to think you are, prove it. Kesha had looked at the car, her eyes, the sharp, analytical eyes of a born diagnostician, taking in the details that the other mechanics, in their arrogance, in their haste, had overlooked. The subtle, almost imperceptible sag in the position of the wiring harness, the specific, stuttering sound the engine made when Marcus had tried, and failed, to start it, the faint, and very telling, color of the smoke that had briefly coughed from the exhaust pipe. To her, the car was not a mystery. It was an open book, and she could read its language as fluently as she could her own. And what if I can? She had asked, her voice a quiet, and utterly infuriating island of calm in the storm of their derision. Impossible, Marcus had laughed, a loud braying sound. But if, by some miracle of God, you actually manage to do it, I will pay you $100,000, right here, right now, in cash. He had paused, his eyes gleaming with a malicious, predatory light. But when you fail, not only will you publicly admit your own incompetence, you will also be required to apologize to every single person in this room for wasting our valuable time with this charade of a female mechanic. The men around, them had begun to murmur a low, excited buzz. $100,000. It was serious money, even in their rarefied social circle. A few of them had pulled out their phones, their screens glowing in the dim, reverent light of the showroom, ready to record the epic, and seemingly inevitable, humiliation. Kesha had taken a deep, slow breath, her grandfather's voice, a warm, steady echo in her mind. Daughter, engines don't see the color of your skin. They don't care if you're a man or a woman. Engines just want to work, they just want someone who knows how to listen to them. For years she had faced this same wearying, soul-crushing wall of disbelief, men who doubted her competence, who questioned her presence, who dismissed her expertise, before she had even had a chance to open her toolbox. I accept, she had said, the two words a quiet, simple declaration of war. The silence that had followed was broken only by the soft, electronic chime of a phone being switched to video mode. Marcus had extended his hand, his smile a triumphant, predatory slash in his handsome face. It's a deal, but you'd better be prepared for a little public humiliation, because I can assure you, it is coming. As they had shaken hands, a strange, and very public, sealing of their bizarre and deeply unequal contract, Kesha had kept her own expression serene, unreadable. What these powerful, privileged, and profoundly arrogant men, in their blissful, self-satisfied ignorance, could not possibly have known, was that every single one of their snide remarks, every condescending glance, every casual, unthinking act of contempt, was about to become the catalyst for a lesson that none of them would ever forget. The first, and most public sign that Marcus Wellington was not joking, that he intended to turn this into a full-blown spectacle, came when he pulled out his phone and began to make a series of calls. Guys, you've got to get down here, he had said, his voice a loud, booming announcement that echoed through the cavernous showroom. He was laughing, a deep, self-satisfied sound. There's a little black woman here, and she thinks she can fix my Lambo. Yes, you heard me right. It's going to be the entertainment of the afternoon. Kesha watched her expression, a mask of calm, professional neutrality, as the pristine, reverent atmosphere of the dealership was slowly, and deliberately, transformed into that of a Roman circus arena. Within 15 short minutes, at least, 20 of Marcus's friends had arrived, a preening, boisterous flock of the city's wealthiest and most powerful men, all of them eager to witness what Marcus had, with no small amount of glee, advertised as the humiliation of the century. A few of them, the ones with a particular taste for the cruel and the unusual, had even started a betting pool on how long it would take her to give up. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus announced. His voice, a theatrical, booming crescendo, he gestured towards Kesha with a sweeping, dramatic flourish. I would like to introduce you to our resident supercar expert. He made air quotes with his fingers, a gesture that elicited a fresh wave of derisive laughter from the assembled crowd. She is now going to demonstrate for us all how a woman fixes what four highly paid, factory-certified men could not. What hurt the most was not the laughter, it was not the snide, whispered comments, it was the look, a look she had known since she was 8 years old, the day her father had first taken her to her grandfather's junkyard, the look of a profound, and deeply ingrained, disbelief. The same look she had received from the boys in her neighborhood, when she had tried to join them in taking apart the engine of an old, abandoned Ford, the same look she had seen on the faces of her college professors, who had openly, and often condescendingly, questioned her presence in their advanced mechanical engineering classes. You know what I find most amusing about this whole situation, Marcus continued, his voice now a low, conspiratorial murmur, clearly playing to his audience. It's that she actually, genuinely, believes she can do it. Look at the confidence, the sheer, unadulterated audacity of it. He paused, for dramatic effect. I'll bet she watched a few videos on YouTube, and now she thinks she's a professional mechanic. A memory, sharp and painful, flashed through her mind. She was 16 years old, on her first day of a coveted internship at a reputable auto repair shop. The supervisor, a grizzled, cynical man with grease permanently embedded in the lines of his hands, had taken one look at her and assigned her to organizing the tools and sweeping the floor. Women are good at organizing, he had said, in front of all the other male interns, who had been immediately assigned to more technical, hands-on jobs. Hey lady, Marcus's voice, a sharp, impatient bark, jolted her back to the present. Are you still with us, or have you already given up? Because if you've had a change of heart, you can still walk away now, without making a complete and utter fool of yourself. She took a deep, slow breath, the familiar, metallic temps of gasoline and oil filling her lungs. She walked over to the Lamborghini, her movements calm, deliberate, and imbued with a quiet, and very real, authority. She placed her hands on the hood of the car, her touch as light and as delicate as that of a surgeon, and she closed her eyes. She felt it, immediately. Something the other mechanics, in their haste, in their arrogance, in their reliance on the cold, impersonal data of their diagnostic machines, had completely missed. An almost imperceptible vibration, a subtle, discordant hum, that told her, with an absolute unshakable certainty, exactly where the problem lay. It was not just a problem with the electronic fuel injection system, it was something deeper, something more fundamental. "May I open the hood?" she asked, her voice a quiet and utterly infuriating island of calm in the storm of their derision. "Be my guest, Professor," Marcus replied, his voice dripping with a thick, syrupy sarcasm. "But I'll warn you now, you're going to see the exact same thing the other four saw, an engine that is far too complex for—" He stopped, abruptly, when he saw the expression on her face. A slow, knowing smile had touched her lips. She had identified the problem. In less than 30 seconds, it wasn't just a simple malfunction. Someone, at some point, had installed an incompatible aftermarket performance chip, a cheap and very dangerous piece of equipment that was causing a series of catastrophic conflicts in the engine's complex management system. It was a rookie mistake, the kind of mistake that only an inexperienced or a profoundly dishonest mechanic would ever make. "Who was the last person to work on this car?" she asked, her voice still a model of cool, professional detachment. "What does it matter?" Marcus replied, a flicker of something that looked suspiciously like defensiveness, in his eyes. "The point is, it doesn't work. You said you could fix it." She saw it then, the sudden, almost imperceptible, shift in his demeanor, the way he had looked away, for just a fraction of a second, when she had mentioned the previous mechanic. There was a story here, a secret, and she was beginning to suspect what it might be. "Of course, I'll fix it," she said, her voice simple, direct, "but I'm going to need some very specific tools. Tools that you probably don't have here." "What kind of tools?" one of the dealership's mechanics asked, his own voice now laced with a new, unvoiced and very different note of respect. "A European-spec diagnostic scanner for post-2020 Lamborghini systems, a full ECU reprogramming kit, and a few other, rather technical, pieces of equipment that—" She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the now silent faces of the assembled crowd, that any mechanic who truly specializes in supercars should be intimately familiar with. Awkward silence that followed was broken by Marcus's special tools, huh? I'll bet that's just a convenient excuse. A way to back out of our little bet, now that you've realized you're in over your head. "It's not an excuse," she replied, pulling out her own phone. "I'm calling my supplier. The tools will be here in 2 hours. What she didn't say, what she couldn't possibly have said, was that her supplier was, in fact, her former supervisor, a senior contact at the very same automotive manufacturing company where she had secretly worked for the past 3 years. A contact who would not only be able to provide her with the necessary and highly specialized equipment, but who could also, if necessary, officially, and very publicly, confirm her true professional identity. While she was on the phone, her voice a low technical murmur, Marcus approached his friends. 2 hours of free theater, gentlemen, he muttered, his voice just loud enough for her to hear. Let's see how far she's willing to take this little charade. She hung up the phone and turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "The tools will be here in 2 hours. May I begin my work now, or would you prefer to continue with your commentary?" "You can work," he said, a cruel, vicious smile spreading across his face. "But when you fail, and you will fail, I want you to look every single one of these men in the eye, and admit that you tried to humiliate a group of honest, hardworking mechanics, who have been working on cars for their entire lives." "Perfect," she replied, her voice maintaining a calm, an equanimity that was beginning to puzzle some of the more attentive observers in the room. "And when I succeed, I trust that you will have the same courage to admit your own mistakes." Each new taunt, each fresh insult, was only serving to fuel something deep inside of her, something that these privileged, powerful men, in their blissful, self-satisfied ignorance, could not possibly see. A fierce and unshakable determination, forged in the crucible of a lifetime of struggles they would never, in their wildest dreams, have to face. And what none of them, not a single one, had yet realized, was that with every single one of their malicious, and increasingly desperate, comments, they were simply writing their own, very public, and very humiliating, Lesson. The 2 hours passed in a slow and increasingly tense crawl. Marcus and his friends, in a display of pure, unadulterated hubris, had turned the waiting period into a private and very exclusive party. Bottles of expensive, vintage champagne had been ordered, and the men had become louder, more boisterous, their bets on Kesha's inevitable failure growing more cruel and more specific with each passing minute. A few of them had even started filming short, mocking videos for their social media accounts, preemptively celebrating the humiliation of the uppity female mechanic. "I'll bet the special tools don't even arrive," laughed Jonathan Berkshire, the heir to a vast hotel fortune, his voice a loud braying sound that echoed through the showroom. It was probably just an excuse, a way to buy herself some time before she finally admits that she doesn't have a clue what she's doing. Kesha sat in a simple hard-backed chair in the corner of the room, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. She appeared to be ignoring their comments, but in reality she was watching, and she was listening, and she was learning. She was particularly interested in Marcus's reactions. Every time one of his friends mentioned the other mechanics who had worked on the car, every time they alluded to the previous and very expensive repair attempts, he became visibly, almost painfully, uncomfortable. There was a secret here, a secret he was desperate to protect. When the large, unmarked truck from Advanced Automotive Solutions pulled up to the dealership, a sudden, expectant silence fell over the room. This was not the beat-up, greasy van of a local repair shop. This was a state-of-the-art, custom-built mobile diagnostic unit, a vehicle loaded with equipment that was worth more than most of the expensive, exotic cars on the showroom floor. Tall, impeccably dressed man stepped out of the truck. He was wearing a spotless, dark blue mechanic's uniform, with the Lamborghini logo discreetly embroidered on the breast pocket. "I'm looking for a Kesha Johnson," he said, his voice a low professional baritone. "That's me, David," she replied, rising from her chair, her movements calm, unhurried. David Morrison was a senior engineer in the performance division of Lamborghini North America for 3 long and very productive years. He had been Kesha's direct supervisor, her mentor, and her friend during her secret and highly successful tenure as a technical consultant. He knew, better than anyone in that room, the true and extraordinary extent of her skills. "I brought everything you asked for," he said, as he began to unload a series of sleek, high-tech pieces of equipment, machines that made the dealership's own state-of-the-art diagnostic tools look like children's toys. "David, this is a slightly unusual situation," she said, her voice a low, discreet murmur, as she gestured towards the crowd of wealthy, and now very quiet, men who were watching their every move. "I saw you on the dealership's security cameras when I arrived," he replied, his own voice equally discreet. "And I have a feeling that the problem here is not just a technical one. Would you like me to stay, to provide technical support?" David's offer was a lifeline and a weapon. With his presence, his official, Lamborghini-sanctioned presence, Kesha was not just gaining a technical assistant, she was gaining a witness, an official witness, a witness who could, and would, corroborate any and all of her findings regarding the unauthorized and potentially illegal modifications that had been made to the vehicle. "That would be great, David. Thank you." Marcus, his face now a mask of nervous, barely concealed panic, approached them. "Who is this guy? You can't bring in outside help. This was supposed to be an individual test." David G. Morrison, he introduced himself, extending an official Lamborghini corporate card. "Senior engineer, Lamborghini North America. I am here solely in an observational capacity to provide technical support for our specialized, proprietary equipment. Miss Johnson will be conducting all of the diagnostic work herself." The small embossed card was passed from hand to hand among the onlookers, a silent and very powerful testament to the sudden and very dramatic shift in the dynamics of the situation. The circus atmosphere, the gleeful, cruel anticipation of a public humiliation had evaporated, replaced by something much more serious. This was no longer just a cruel and very expensive bet. This was a professional and very official, technical investigation. Official Lamborghini. One of Marcus's friends stammered, his voice a low, incredulous whisper. She knows people at Lamborghini." Kesha connected the first piece of equipment to the car, and the diagnostic screen immediately lit up with a series of codes, a string of data that made David's eyebrows shoot up in surprise. "Kesha, are you seeing this?" he muttered, pointing to a specific and highly irregular set of readings. "I see it," she replied, her voice still a model of cool, professional detachment, but her eyes, for the first time, sparkled with a flicker of something that looked a lot like triumph. The ECU was reprogrammed with an unauthorized and highly unstable software package approximately 3 months ago, and a third-party aftermarket performance chip was installed, without the proper and very necessary calibration. Serious, David said, his voice now loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Very serious. Unauthorized modifications of this nature can completely void the vehicle's warranty, and they can create a number of significant safety issues. Marcus was now visibly pale. Wait a minute, that has nothing to do with the bet. The bet was just to get the car running. Actually, Kesha replied, her fingers flying across the diagnostic keypad. It has everything to do with it, because whoever installed these modifications did such a shoddy and frankly, dangerously incompetent job, that they created a series of cascading conflicts in the system, conflicts that are making it impossible for the engine to run properly. Over the next hour, she worked with a calm, methodical, and deeply impressive precision. She removed each of the unauthorized modifications, her hands moving with the practiced, confident grace of a person who had performed this exact kind of delicate and highly complex work hundreds of times before. Interesting, she commented, as she held up the small, black performance chip for David to see. This one is a counterfeit. It's designed to look like a premium high-performance chip, but it's actually a cheap and very dangerous replica. A replica that could, if used for an extended period of time, cause catastrophic and permanent damage to the engine. A counterfeit, David leaned in, his own expression now a mask of grim professional concern. This is serious. These counterfeit chips are notoriously unreliable, and they are highly illegal. Whoever installed this was putting the owner's life in very real danger. Marcus was now openly sweating. Look, maybe we should just stop here. The important thing is that the car works, right? We don't need to get into a whole investigation, Mr. Wellington. Kesha interrupted, her voice cool, sharp, and precise. You mentioned that 4 different mechanics have already tried, and failed, to fix this car. May I ask where the most recent modifications were made? I don't remember exactly, he stammered, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape. David, meanwhile, was consulting his own tablet. He frowned. Mr. Wellington, according to our official corporate records, this vehicle has never undergone any authorized performance modifications. Any work of this nature should have been reported and registered with our headquarters. You have records of everything? One of Marcus's friends asked, his voice a low, incredulous whisper. Of course, David replied. Every single Lamborghini has a complete and very detailed history of all maintenance, all repairs, all modifications, especially when it involves any changes to the vehicle's electronic systems. Kesha continued to work, but now, with a new and very different purpose. She was no longer just repairing a car, she was collecting evidence. Every counterfeit part, every poorly executed modification, every single sign of amateurish and dangerously incompetent work was being officially and irrefutably documented. David, she said, as she connected the final cable, would you please be so kind as to record an official, technical report of our findings here today? Of course, he replied, understanding, immediately, the strategic importance of her request. A full, and very detailed, report on all unauthorized modifications, all counterfeit parts, and all potential damages to the vehicle. The silence in the workshop was now absolute, deafening. The men who had, just an hour before, been cracking cruel and deeply unfunny jokes, now stood in a state of stunned and very uncomfortable silence. They were watching a serious and very official technical investigation being conducted by 2 professionals who clearly knew more about luxury, high-performance automobiles than any of them could ever hope to. Marcus, in a last, desperate gamble, tried to regain control of the situation. Look, this is all very interesting, but the deal was simple. Either you make the car work or you admit that you can't. Kesha stopped working and looked at him, her gaze direct, unwavering, and deeply, profoundly unimpressed. Mr. Wellington, the car will work perfectly, but we now have a much more serious and much more interesting situation to discuss. She paused for a long and very dramatic moment, because it seems that someone has clearly tried to cheat you by selling you a series of fake and very dangerous modifications, and I have a very strong and very specific suspicion as to who that someone might be. The look of pure, unadulterated panic on Marcus's face told her everything she needed to know. She had hit the nail on the head. There was more to this story, much more than just a cruel and very stupid bet. And Kesha Johnson was determined to uncover the whole, ugly, and very profitable truth. Everything is ready for the final test, Kesha, David said, his voice a low, steady murmur. Perfect, she replied, her hands positioning themselves on the ignition key. Let's see if 3 years of developing electronic systems for Lamborghini has taught me anything. As the entire room held its breath, Kesha realized, with a sudden and very satisfying clarity, that she was about to prove much more than just her own technical competence. She was about to expose a network of fraud, a conspiracy of greed and incompetence that likely extended far beyond this one very expensive and very broken Lamborghini. And Marcus Wellington III, she knew, was just beginning to realize that he had made the fatal and very public mistake of betting on the wrong person. The moment of truth arrived with a roar. Kesha turned the key, and the Lamborghini's V12 engine didn't just start, it exploded into life, a symphony of raw, untamed power that shook the very walls of the dealership. It was the sound of a perfectly tuned, high-performance Italian machine, running exactly as its engineers had designed it to run, free of interference, free of cheap, counterfeit modifications, free of lies. The stunned silence that followed was broken by a collective, and very audible, gasp. The men who had spent the better part of the afternoon mocking her, deriding her, and betting on her failure, now stared at each other with expressions of pure, unadulterated shock. Marcus Wellington III, in particular, looked as if he had just seen a ghost. Impossible, he muttered, his voice a low, strangled whisper. He approached the car, his movements slow, tentative, as if he expected it to be a mirage, a cruel auditory hallucination. How did you do that? Simple, Kesha replied, her voice a model of cool, professional detachment, as she switched off the engine and stepped out of the car. I removed all of the unauthorized, and frankly, dangerous, modifications. I replaced the counterfeit parts with original, factory-certified components, and I reprogrammed the vehicle's entire electronic system, restoring it to its original, factory specifications. David Morrison approached his tablet in his hand, his expression a mask of grim, professional seriousness. Mr. Wellington, as an official representative of Lamborghini North America, I am now required to formally inform you of our findings during this diagnostic procedure. His voice had shifted, from the friendly, supportive tone he had used with Kesha, to a cold, and very official, formality. This vehicle has been subjected to a series of extremely dangerous modifications. Modifications that have not only, and irrevocably, voided its factory warranty, but that have also put your own personal safety at very real, and very significant, risk. What kind of risk? Jonathan Berkshire, the hotel heir, asked, his own voice now laced with a new, and very personal, note of concern. The counterfeit performance chip, Kesha explained, pointing to the data on her own tablet, was causing the engine to overheat at an alarming rate. A few more weeks of use, and you would have, in all likelihood, experienced a catastrophic, and very fiery, engine failure. Marcus's face, which had been pale, now turned a sickly, greenish-white fire. You're just trying to scare me. I'm not trying to do anything, sir, David replied, his voice as dry as desert sand. I am simply stating the technical facts. The fact is, Miss Johnson has, in all probability, just saved your life, by identifying and correcting these modifications. He paused, for a long, and very significant, moment. And incidentally, Miss Johnson is not, as you have so charmingly suggested, just any mechanic. This is Kesha Johnson, a former senior consultant to our own performance engineering division. A fresh murmur of surprise, of disbelief, rippled through the now chastened crowd. A former consultant, someone asked, his voice a low, incredulous whisper. For 3 years, David continued, a flicker of pride in his eyes as he made the formal introduction. Miss Johnson was responsible for the development and testing of the electronic systems in some of our most advanced, and most exclusive, models. She holds a series of certifications that most mechanics can only dream of ever achieving. Marcus, in a desperate and frankly pathetic attempt to regain some semblance of control over the situation, stammered, Okay, she fixed the car, congratulations. Now, where's my money? One moment, Kesha said, her voice a sharp, commanding crack in the tense silence. David discreetly handed her an envelope. Before we discuss the matter of payment, Mr. Wellington, I believe we need to discuss some of our other interesting findings. Specifically, the findings related to the identity of the person who installed these dangerous and highly illegal modifications in your car in the first place. The look of pure, unadulterated panic on Marcus's face was instantaneous. What findings? David opened his own laptop and connected it to a portable projector he had. With a startling and very telling foresight brought with him, he projected a series of numbers and codes onto the white wall of the dealership. During our analysis of the vehicle's electronic systems, we discovered something fascinating. The counterfeit chip that was installed in your car has a traceable serial number. So what? Marcus asked, but his voice was now weak, uncertain. This specific chip, Kesha continued, her eyes fixed on his, was sold by a company called Performance Plus Modifications, a company that, interestingly enough, lists you, Mr. Wellington, as its majority shareholder. The silence in the workshop was now absolute, deafening. All eyes, every single one of them, turned to Marcus, who was now visibly and profusely sweating. That's ridiculous. I've never— Mr. Wellington, David interrupted, his voice a low, damning verdict as he projected a new set of documents onto the wall. We have the official corporate records right here. Performance Plus Modifications. Tax ID number 877-42921. Majority shareholder Marcus Wellington 3. 60% of the shares. The revelation was a bombshell. Marcus had not only installed counterfeit and very dangerous parts in his own car, he had then, deliberately and with a breathtaking cynicism, used the resulting and very predictable mechanical problems to create a narrative, a false narrative, that would justify his own racist and sexist prejudices, a narrative that would also, not coincidentally, allow him to profit from the sale of his own dangerously defective products. Wait a minute, Jonathan Berkshire said, his voice a low, angry growl as he took a step away from Marcus. You installed fake parts in your own car. Why would you do that? Kesha took another document from the envelope. Because, gentlemen, he needed to create a problem that he knew would be difficult, if not impossible, for a traditional mechanic to solve. He needed to create a situation that would allow him to prove that other, more established, mechanics were incompetent. And then, he could use that proof to justify the sale of his own, supposedly superior, solutions. And that's not all, David added, his own voice now laced with a cold, professional fury. Our corporate records show that at least 15 other Lamborghini owners have purchased modification kits from this company in the last 6 months alone, all of them with the same dangerously defective and potentially fatal problems. One of Marcus's other friends, a man named Richard Foster, was now livid. Marcus, you sold me a performance kit last month. My Aventador has been having problems for weeks, and I bought one for my Ferrari. Another man shouted, his voice a chorus of angry and very public betrayal. You assured me it was factory original. The situation had now completely and irrevocably shifted. Marcus was no longer just a prejudiced and deeply unpleasant rich man. He was a fraud, a criminal, a man who had, for his own financial gain, and to feed his own ugly, racist and sexist agenda, put the lives of his own friends at risk. Mr. Wellington, David said, his voice now a formal and very official pronouncement. As a representative of Lamborghini North America, I am hereby informing you that we are launching a formal and very serious investigation into the unauthorized and highly illegal modifications sold by your company. In addition, our legal team will be in contact with you shortly regarding the matters of trademark violation and the unauthorized use of our corporate logos on your counterfeit products. Kesha approached Marcus, who was now a broken and very publicly humiliated man now, she said, her voice calm, even, and utterly, beautifully, triumphant. About our original bet. You promised to pay me $100,000 if I fixed your car. As you can see, the car is running perfectly, but, he stammered, his eyes darting around the room, but finding no allies, no sympathetic faces, only a sea of angry, and very public, condemnation. And you, she continued, her voice relentless, said that, if I failed, I would have to publicly admit that women don't understand engines. Well, Mr. Wellington, the car is running, so, now, it is your turn to admit a few things. David switched on the professional-grade video camera he had, with that same startling foresight, brought with him. For legal purposes, he announced, his voice a calm and very official declaration. We will now need to record your official confession regarding the fraudulent and highly dangerous modifications. Marcus looked around the room, at the faces of the men who had once been his friends, his allies, his co-conspirators in the casual, unthinking cruelty of their privileged world, and he saw nothing but a cold and very public disgust. In the space of a few short and very public hours, he had gone from a respected and very wealthy man to an exposed and very public fraud. Kesha, he tried, his voice now a low, pleading whisper, can we talk privately? Maybe we can work something out. There is no deal to be made, Mr. Wellington, she replied, her voice firm, unwavering, and utterly beautifully resolute. You did not just try to humiliate me, because I am a woman, and because I am black. You put people's lives at risk, and you used your prejudice, your racism, and your sexism to cover up your crimes. Jonathan Berkshire, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated disgust, took another step away from Marcus. You're a monster, man. You tried to use your racism to cover up the fact that you're a criminal. David closed his laptop and addressed the entire, and now very chastened, room. Gentlemen, as an official representative of Lamborghini, I would strongly, and I mean strongly, recommend that anyone who has purchased any modifications from Mr. Wellington's company immediately contact an authorized dealership for a full and very thorough safety review. While Marcus tried to process the full and very public destruction of his reputation, his business, and, in all likelihood, his freedom, Kesha calmly and quietly began to pack away her tools. She showed no anger, no vindictiveness, only the quiet and very deep satisfaction of a person who has just, with a beautiful and very public display of technical competence and moral integrity, served a cold and very satisfying dish of justice. David, she said, her voice a low, professional murmur, would you please be so kind as to send a full and unredacted copy of our technical report to the local police department? I have a feeling they will be very interested to investigate just how many other people have been put at risk by these modifications. What had started as a cruel and very stupid bet based on a foundation of pure, unadulterated prejudice had just, in a spectacular and very public turn of events, become the complete and very satisfying exposure of a dangerous and deeply cynical criminal scheme. And Marcus Wellington III, she knew, was just beginning to discover that betting against the wrong person can cost you a lot more than just $100,000. It can cost you everything. 6 months later, Kesha Johnson was signing the contract that would make her the new technical director of the largest and most prestigious luxury car dealership network on the entire West Coast. Her salary had increased by over 400%, and she was now in charge of a team of over 80 highly skilled and very diverse expert mechanics. Miss Johnson, the CEO of the dealership network, had said, during the public and very well-attended signing ceremony, "Your brilliant and very public exposure of the Performance Plus fraud scheme has, in all likelihood, saved our entire industry from a much larger and much more devastating scandal. 17 of our dealerships have already, and with great success, implemented the new benign and very rigorous security protocols that you have developed." Her story had gone viral. The video of Marcus's forced and deeply humiliating public confession had garnered over 2 million views in the first 48 hours, turning Kesha into a national and very unlikely symbol of technical competence, professional integrity, and the quiet and very powerful triumph of the underdog. Marcus Wellington III, on the other hand, had met a very different fate. His company had been shut down by the FBI. He had lost over $80 million in a series of class action lawsuits, and his former wealthy friends now shunned him as if he were carrying the bubonic plague. The last public record of him showed that he was working as a salesman at a used car dealership in a dusty, forgotten corner of the San Fernando Valley, earning minimum wage. Ironic, isn't it? David Morrison had remarked, during the small and very exclusive party that had been thrown to celebrate Kesha's promotion. The man who so publicly and so confidently declared that women don't understand engines is now working for a dealership network whose entire security protocol was created by the very same black woman he tried so desperately and so publicly to humiliate. Kesha had smiled, her gaze sweeping across the happy and very diverse faces of her new team. 40% of them were women, 30% were people of color. All of them had been hired for one reason, and one reason only: their technical skill, not their looks, not their gender, not their family connections. "You know what the best revenge was, David?" she had said, her voice a low and very satisfied murmur. It wasn't destroying Marcus. It was proving, in a very public and very irrefutable way, that excellence has no color, it has no gender, and that prejudice is, at its heart, simply a tragic and very expensive waste of talent. Her real victory was not in the $100,000 that Marcus had been forced, very publicly, to pay her. It was in the complete and very necessary transformation of an entire industry. She had proven that the best and most effective response to prejudice is not anger, it is competence. A competence so profound, so unshakable, so utterly and beautifully irrefutable, that it forces the world, however reluctantly, to recognize your excellence. Marcus had tried to destroy her using the old and very tired weapons of racism and sexism, but in the end he had only succeeded in destroying himself, and Kesha had learned that the truest and most satisfying form of revenge is not in getting back at those who have hurt you. It is in achieving a level of success and a sense of personal and professional fulfillment that your enemies could never, in their wildest and most limited dreams, have ever imagined.